Welcome everyone to the IAM CX podcast. This podcast series shares information and best practices on using customer experience strategies to increase customer engagement, brand loyalty, revenue, and operational success to make your business in the Caribbean a paradise driven by data. I am not in my regular location today, but I'm still Richard Dorsey, the CEO of Island Analytics and Marketing, IAM for short. We are a Caribbean-based data and marketing consulting company in the Virgin Islands. I am joined once again by Roger Nicholas, our Director of Customer Experience for IAM. And in this IAM CX podcast, we have the wonderful guest, Miss Anita Toth. She's a Chief Churn Crusher at ATI. That's a tongue twister, Anita, good job. She is the Chief Churn Crusher at ATI, which is a customer retention research strategy and education firm serving business to business, software as a service, or SaaS companies. Anita's mission is to create happier customers and a more profitable business by helping companies better understand what their customers want, what they need, and what they feel. She is a five-time award winner in customer success and business innovation. She also teaches the highly popular Difficult Customer Conversations course and SuccessCoaching. Anita is currently writing her first book on customer retention. We're excited to intensely discuss customer defection here in the Caribbean with Anita Toth on our IAM CX podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please, speak to our audience.
Yay. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here. I think we have I think we'll have some fun and but also have a little bit of a serious tone as to why it's so important for companies to have a customer experience strategy and then also, focus on how do you increase customer retention. It comes down to a simple equation that the more that you can retain your customers, the more profitable your business will be. Simple as that. So we're gonna break this apart, and I'll also share some tips, hopefully, that you can implement immediately and get some traction and maybe get excited about increasing customer retention for your company.
Awesome. So could you give us maybe 2 or 3 points from your work history, from some of your endeavors that kind of gives the audience an understanding of where you are and where you sit in your industry?
Absolutely. So great intro. You heard the awards we won, but before that time, I actually worked in a university for many years doing qualitative research. And so 14 years to be exact, and was laid off because of just, the funding environment changed and the dollars dried up. And I've always been passionate about knowing why people do what they do. And so qualitative research gets into that, then if you're wondering what qualitative data is, it's all of the stuff that's not the hard numbers. It's the conversations, it's the text messages, it's the phone calls. How do you take all of that unstructured data and use it to achieve business, positive business outcomes? So, had a bunch of businesses that I founded. Some sold, some of them weren't successful, and some of them now are successful. But 3 years ago, I pivoted our company particularly to focusing on increasing customer retention. Churn, which is, you heard my title, Chief Churn Crusher. So churn is the negative. Churn is, usually when you're focusing on churn, it's because, and if people are wondering what churn is when your customers leave. So for a recurring revenue model, so that's where maybe you have a monthly service fee that you're charging your customers or your clients, it gets very expensive to acquire new customers to then replace the ones that have just left. And if they're leaving, at a high rate, that's where the profits are lost. So the more you can retain the customers that you have, the more profitable the business becomes. I became really passionate about this. So this is it. For the last 3 years, our business has focused on increasing customer retention. Let's focus on the positive things we can do to keep our customers longer before they decide to leave. So that's really our area of focus.
Awesome. Go ahead, Roger.
So thanks. So it sounds like, Anita, that there's a difference between a retention strategy and a churn management strategy. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is some overlap.
Yes. Okay.
But yeah, go ahead, Roger, because I can hear that there's a second part to this.
Well, no. I just felt that the audience should understand that while there is some overlap, they are separate strategies, because one is about keeping what you have, and the other one is preventing those that you have from leaving. And those are very different strategic decisions, resources, focus, in my view. So I felt that it was important for our audience to understand.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
To give some context to why this is an important discussion for our region and for our audience. This research comes from the White House Office of Consumer Affairs, and it describes the top characteristics of companies that are growing at less than 10% a year. It's kind of scary, right? It says they average net churn over 40% in the last 12 months. The Net Promoter Score lags behind their industry peers. They're unsure how their program compares to the competition. They're unsure how to improve performance or how to quantify a return on investment. And the other one, the last one, is that it takes months or longer to act on customer feedback.
Yeah.
And so I felt it was necessary to share that, because that may speak to a lot of our audience. That this may make a lot of people uncomfortable in their seats right now, because it's familiar. They haven't grown beyond 2-3%, 5% in the last 2 or 3 years, and they may not know why. So I felt that it was important for us to have this context. So you kind of defined for us what churn is already. You've kind of hinted at why businesses should be proactive about it, but in this recessionary environment, is it more important to be good at customer retention, Anita?
Yeah, and it's so the big thing is that companies have been so heavily focused on sales. We understand what sales is. It's sales and marketing and sales. I'll put the two together sort of before people become customers. We're all very familiar with what that process is like, and it tends to be tactical. Small pivots can, we'll try this instead of this. We'll go after this instead of this. And then you measure it and go, okay, are we doing better or worse? The challenge is once customers become customers, it's not tactical. So if you can think of it like marketing and sales is like dating, maybe you're getting engaged,
It's a relationship.
It's a relationship, but it's a very different type of relationship for anybody who's been married. Once you get married, those same things, showing up at the flowers and all of that, once in a while is not going to work in the marriage part long term. There's also, you very much have to start listening and engaging and communicating. It's much more of a dialogue, right? And it's this no different with companies, and where companies are really challenged. And to your point, Roger, this is where strategy comes in. What are those activities going to be where we feel like we have a relationship with our customers or our clients? It's not just more one-sided like it might be when you're dating, one person pursuing the other. But once you're in that committed relationship, the customers are paying you money. What are you going to do now to keep them there? And then it's a whole other, discussion about how are you going to grow those accounts, but let's just focus on how are you going to keep them there? And that's why you need a strategy.
Wow. I love your analogy. And it's very timely because I recently got engaged. So you're now reminding me that I need to keep my game up. Just like my courtship, I need to keep my game up for the rest
Yeah.
of this run. I don't want to mess this one up. This is my second and my last. Right. So thank you for that analogy. But no, I like it because you're spot on. It is a courtship in the beginning, and one is pursuing the other. And many times we drop the ball after we get to first base. Right. And but you're right. We now need to listen. It now needs to be bilateral or true communication, which is two-way. So I really like that. Richard, you had a question?
So why is it that companies might miss the mark? You know, they're focused on sales, they're focused on marketing, they're getting the dollars in by attracting new customers. Why is it they might be a little bit blind to this? Is it because they're just too focused on incoming customers, or, you know, is just churn a thing they don't want to think about or discuss? Why have you seen your clients kind of just miss the mark?
I honestly think it's because it's more work. It is not as tactical. You can not much has changed with marketing and sales. You go out there with marketing, it's like dating. You're talking to a whole bunch of people and maybe a couple might be interested. So you move it to the next level, which is sales. You have some deeper conversations with them. And some of those are going to be, yeah, let's become customers. So I think all of us are very, very familiar with that process, but we're not as familiar with the marriage part, right? What do we need to do? And it's because it's constantly changing. So when a customer first becomes a customer, and we call it that onboarding phase, kind of like the honeymoon. So if you look at it this way, this is where customers are going, okay, wait a minute. When we were talking in marketing and sales, you promised these things. I thought, this looks good. I'm going to try it out. And then they become a customer and they go, what? Like, these things didn't materialize. I'm gone. Right? It can happen very quickly, or it can happen, you know, maybe it takes a couple weeks or a couple months. But if expectations and reality do not match in that honeymoon phase, that onboarding phase, when they're a new customer, those seeds of churn are being laid. And what people don't realize is that humans make decisions on feelings first, and then we rationalize it. So if somebody's coming in and they're, you know, if they bought your product or service, and then they're already like, oh, I didn't like this and I didn't like that, but I'll stick with it and see what happens. Those feelings are there percolating beneath the surface. And now they're looking for more evidence to either turn that around and say, okay, it was a bit of a rocky start. Some marriages do very well with rocky starts, but the majority, if you start off with a rocky start, it's very, very hard to turn it around.
I like how you say that, rocky start, because Roger, we had this conversation off air and we're going to have more of it on air. So in the Caribbean, we're waterlocked and our economies are very structured. So oftentimes you'll have, you know, little monopolies, you know, the only gas station that serves this type of beverage that you like, or the only repair shop that can do this particular repair to your vehicle. So we have a lot of like little economic silos where people kind of just hold a mark on it. And we've discussed this before, Roger. Why are Caribbean customers loyal to disloyal businesses and services? So I don't know if maybe in your rural studies or in your smaller business, what do you think might be the reason why customers who are still dissatisfied still patronize over and over, and where are businesses not realizing that's an unhealthy marriage, if we're going to keep with that analogy?
I love it. This can really work not only at the small level, but at the big level as well, where there are very few players in a market. So you think like telecommunications company. I'm in Canada. In Canada, well, they just merged another one. I think we're down to 3.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, it's not like the US where it's competitive and it's open. It's been a very, very closed market. And that's at a huge, huge level. Oh, wow. They become loyal, even though the companies don't treat them well, because there's a lack of alternatives. It's like, well, I like this. I don't like how they treat me, but I don't know where else to go. And so even in that huge telemarket industry here in Canada, all you do is switch between 3 companies because there are no other options. You don't feel great about it. And then all they do is they dangle offers in front of you to entice you to stay. So I want to just point something out, going back to an earlier part of the conversation, Roger, where you said, what's the difference between a customer retention strategy and a customer churn strategy? One is trying to get you to stay. Another is trying to prevent you from leaving. And when you're preventing someone from leaving, that's sort of desperation and fear. So what you're going to do is going to be very different from when you're trying to encourage someone to stay. So I just wanted to point that out. That's a big difference in the activities and the types of offers you're going to put in front of people.
I am going to extend that analogy and say, guys, remember that time when you won her and then she said she was leaving and you started to beg? Retention strategy, churn strategy. That's very, very different. Okay, so that should resonate with some of us who've had to beg once or twice. I'm not going to say call any names, but but thank you for that clarity there, Anita. So there's something you mentioned earlier, and I want to zero in on it. You mentioned, and I read an interview that Dan Genghis did recently that mentioned that 20 to 70% of customers who churn within the first 30 days. I'm sorry, 3 months, 90 days, he said, 90 to 100 days. Is it really that short of a window that we have to save our marriage, our relationship with the customer?
Yep. And that's what we were talking about earlier, that onboarding, or that's the honeymoon phase. If you think about it, I believe we're going to be offering a resource with this, and in that you will see, what the customer relationship looks like. And that honeymoon phase, expectations are really high. So there's something called, the buyer's journey. So people have a problem. They're coming in. Oh, they discover your solution. Oh, it looks really good. They're going through your marketing and sales process. And they're getting more hopeful that you can help them with, solve their problem or make something better. So if you think about it, they're now in an emotional peak when they decide to become a customer. Even if they're cautious, there's hope, right? Hope that maybe you can make things better for them. But in those first 90 days or 100 days, that onboarding, that honeymoon phase, if they don't start seeing some serious evidence toward that, then they dip into what we've all had, and it's called buyer's remorse, where you just regret. And it's no different with marriage as well, where, you sign on the dotted line, you're all excited, you're honeymooning, and then you're like, oh boy, what are these red flags that are coming? Oh, I don't like this. And so it's no different. And that statistic's very accurate. The seeds of churn, whether somebody's going to decide to leave or decide to stay, is really made in that honeymoon onboarding phase, those first 90 days. It really is.
So, Roger, you want to continue?
No, I wanted that to sit and marinate with the audience, because I don't think we're aware of that window and the urgency of it in the Caribbean. You're talking 90 days to save a customer, whether they show signs that they're going to leave or not. I think that's incredible. Go ahead, Richard.
So I'm just going to make a tag to for all of our customers and listeners that love 90 Day Fiancé. It's a similar premise. You only have that amount of time. No, but you said businesses are not aware of things. And that leads us kind of our next point. What are some problematic signs that businesses should be aware of? And I'd like to connect it to your strengths, qualitative research. What anecdotal information, what customer experience situation should businesses and to customers be aware of? Because to localize it once again, we live in a very small community in the Caribbean. So we hear a lot of story. There's a lot of word of mouth is king. Is king when it comes to this. So what should we as business owners be looking for, and what are we missing to see that we have a churn problem?
I actually think it's excellent that you have such a rich feedback mechanism right in place with word of mouth. It's extremely powerful everywhere. And word of mouth can also mean like one-on-one, like we're talking now, but also on social media. That is also word of mouth marketing. Becomes really important to listen for two things: the stuff you're doing right and the stuff you're not doing right. Because there's opportunities in both. And reach out to those customers. You don't have to reach out to every single one of them, but if you're hearing positive and you're hearing negative, make a decision and say, okay, we're going to every month reach out to 5 of the positive people and 5 of the people who are saying negative things, and speak a little bit more with them. Even a 15-minute call. And I really recommend having a call. It can be face-to-face. It can be like this, where it's virtual. It can be on the phone. Doesn't matter. Reach out and start asking them a little bit more about why it's like that for them. Why are you so happy? Why are you so upset? And what you're going to find is there's going to be some very key demographic differences between the two. And not only demographic, but mindset differences. Your happy customers are thinking and doing things very differently than your unhappy ones. And it doesn't take a ton of data to figure this out. You'll start seeing that big gap between the two really quickly so we're a professional services firm. We do focus on research. We typically start with 20 interviews. Okay, I know that sounds like a lot. You don't have to do them all at once, but if you even commit to doing 5 a month for 15, 20 minutes, that's it. 1 a week. You will and record it and look for those differences. Those differences become opportunities, because now you can take those unhappy people and start figuring out how you can, maybe make them to satisfied so they stay a little longer, instead of, I was deciding to leave, now maybe I'll stay. And then once you get a bigger bulk of people who are wanting to stay, then you can move them up to being happier customers. And it really is just conversations. Talk to them. Ask them what's going on with them. The biggest thing, ask them how they feel. Why do you feel the way you do? Because remember, those decisions are based on feelings first.
That is powerful. That is really, really powerful. And I think, to emphasize and amplify your point too, Anita, customers, the average loyal customer is, according to research, is worth up to 10 times their first purchase. So if we don't get to the point of creating the loyal customer, we miss out on up to 10 times their first purchase. We're missing out on, we might get the first purchase, but if we don't do it right, we lose their repurchase, their upsell, their cross-sell, their referrals, the cost savings from the cost to serve. We lose the flow-through revenue from the cost to serve, as well as the flow-through revenue from lowered customer acquisition costs.
Yep.
And we lose that over the course of the number of years that they stay with us. So it's mind-blowing, and my paws are raised, because I can see how the Apples and the Disneys and the Southwests of the world keep sustaining this growth, because they focus on making sure their customers become loyal. They do what you're doing. They follow up with those who are happy to find out why. They promote that. They focus on those who aren't happy, understand that, try to fix it so they can at least save some of those who are leaving. Because those who are upset tend to tell 9 to 15 other customers they are unhappy. So there's a revenue reason both ways, to listen and to fix. So thank you for that point.
And I just want to say this to your list, Roger, and we spoke about it earlier, the positive word of mouth marketing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How much when customers are happy, how much of us have purchased because somebody we know says, "Hey, I had a really great experience. I love what they do. Look at what they've done for me." Like, and then similarly, I know I've read reviews, I've spoken with people, stay away. Oof,
Yeah.
okay. And once somebody says, "You know what, I had a really bad experience with that company." I don't know about the two of you, but me personally, I tend not to even investigate if that's true. I listen because I trust that person. And if they're saying they had a bad experience and this is what happened to them, I'm like, I'm not even going to look. I'll look at one of their competitors instead. I've done that personally. And this is the industry that I'm in.
Yeah.
Trying, so if I'm doing this, what is everybody else doing? Well, we're all doing the same thing.
Yeah, definitely.
You had a question,
Roger, I know we were going to get into the finite window, but I think Anita already addressed that. So I'm thankful for that. What are some tactics that you think companies must do, not should do, must do to improve churn rates? Is there a different focus or measures for retention that they should be taking a look at?
The exact same thing. Number one, if you are not talking to your customers on a regular basis, and like I said, in person, phone call, Zoom calls, whatever it is, and I don't mean just like chatting, "Oh, hey, how's your day?" Finding out how they are feeling. What were their expectations when they started this relationship? Are they being met? And start tracking those things over time. Do it with your happiest. Do it with your most unhappy customers. Those are the things. You can start tomorrow. You can start today, unless you're listening at night. You know what I mean? There's no reason to not reach out for 15 minutes, write out 3 or 4 questions. And they're as simple as this. Number 1, why did you become a customer? Actually, I usually don't like the word why, but tell us a little more about, here's the why. Tell us a little bit more about why you wanted to, work with us or use our product or whatever it is. Why did they want to become a customer? Number 1. And ask around, did their expectations meet with reality? And get people, we all give surface level answers first. We're social creatures. We want people to view us in a positive light. So dig a little deeper. When they give you an answer, this is my favorite thing to ask right after. And it's not even a question. Tell me more. Roger's got it. Tell me more. Tell me more about that. What was that like for you? How did that feel? And then the third thing is to either ask about, do they want to stay or do they, are they unhappy? Get some gauge of their emotions. And again, when they tell you, "Oh, I'm happy," well, tell me a little bit more about that. What is that like for you? How does that feel? What has changed? And ask, 3 or 4 questions. That's it. No more than that. But then you want to go deeper with tell me more about that. "Oh, I'm curious. How did that feel?" Like whatever it is. 3 or 4 questions, ask those exact same questions of your happiest customers and your unhappiest customers. And then, like I said, very quickly, you'll start seeing the differences. Those differences are your areas of opportunity to start keeping more of the customers that you worked so hard to get.
And so much to get, correct. Absolutely. I thank you for that. Because one of the things I think is really important that we miss a lot in business is we might do a CSAT measure and our customers saying that they're satisfied, but satisfaction isn't really telling of loyalty. It just says that you met the basic expectations.
Yeah.
But so it's because that's where the bulk of your defecting customers are going to come from. They're going to come from people who are satisfied.
Exactly.
And it's usually CSAT. I was going to say, Roger, CSAT or customer satisfaction is usually just for what happened prior.
Correct.
And you're right. It's whatever the event was. Were you satisfied with either the service you got or whatever it is not asking about their loyalty and their experience overall. But
And
those
their feelings.
calls,
Mhm.
those calls, get on like I said, speak with your customers directly. That's where you're going to find that out. How loyal are they? What does satisfaction mean to them overall across their entire journey?
And if we miss the mark, what would it take for us to get you to be loyal or to come back? That's the opportunity. That's the real big opportunity there. Because for those few that are willing to say, well, you know, I gave you an 8 because of this, but I'd give you a 10 if you did this.
Yeah.
And then you start seeing aggregately that a lot of people are saying similar things, then you know what your best ROI action is. Am I right?
It's right there. Absolutely. Thank you for explaining it that way, because that is exactly what this is. Exactly. I do have to say one word. I cannot strongly say this enough. When you are on these calls with unhappy customers and you ask a question like this, what can we do? One, unless you've made the decision as a team that you will offer them something, do not offer them anything. Do not make promises that this will be solved, because if it isn't, for sure they're going to leave. For sure. So
and tell others.
Yeah. And tell others. You're so right. So these are not opportunities to win back. These are discussions to understand. So you really need to go in with the right mindset so that you can see those opportunities. Okay, 6 people told us this, like you said, Roger, this is what we could do to go from an 8 to a 10. Why don't we craft an offer then for people who are in that situation and see if, we can increase their loyalty? But that should never come out in those one-on-one conversations.
I think we should repeat that, because you're speaking exactly what they need to hear. So when you go through this process, you're not trying to court them back. You're not trying to make yourself more attractive. I don't want to use the word seduce, but you're not trying to persuade them back. You need to let that go and just accept it as criticism and critique to fix it going forward. And in speaking to owners and managers, I believe we're going to get here eventually. What are the type of conversations that you're having with either C-suite or senior management so that they can wrap their head around this? Because initially what you said is people avoid this, owners and business managers, because it sounds like a lot of work.
Yep.
Data, quantitative or qualitative, it's still scary numbers and people just shy away from it. So what conversations do you have to either encourage them or persuade them that this is something that they need to pay attention to?
Well, one of the most powerful things about having conversations like this, particularly if they're virtual, is that you can ask permission to record. And if you can record them, what you can do, and this is what we do with our clients. So we run these customer interviews on behalf of our clients, right? And when we're reporting back to our clients, we take little snippets of the customers in their own words saying, hey, this is what it would take to take me from an 8 to a 10. And then when you take 2 or 3 of those and you go and you present it to the C-suite, it becomes much more difficult for them to refute it or to pass it off as just, oh, that's anecdotal. Well, okay, it might be anecdotal because there's only 3, but hey, we've spoken to 15 others and they've said the same thing. And we suspect as time goes on, we're going to hear this more and more. And once it comes out of the customer's mouth themselves, it gets very, very difficult for the C-suite to just dismiss it.
Yes. So further to that, Anita, would you suggest, because I've suggested this to clients in the past, would you suggest that they, after a few of those conversations, do take a portion of their customer base and do a quick survey to find out how consistent that is?
Perfect.
Because that can amplify those 3 snippets you show C-suite.
Yep.
If they're quick to say, well, that's just 3 people, that's just 15 people, actually it's 100 people. And that was just for this quarter for new customers. That's not the entire database. but that's a problem. That's a problem they can't ignore. Okay.
So
Wow.
I love that you brought this up, Roger. And for those listening, you can't see me nodding my head or how excited I am. If you're watching this, you can. Interviews are deep, but a small number. And then most companies use surveys wrong. They really do. You want to use surveys to validate what you heard in those calls. To your point, Roger, you're never going to statistically get enough customer interviews because they take a long time. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to go really deep. Surveys are very surface level, but you can send it out across your entire customer base. So you could find out, hey, we're hearing this. Let's see if this also applies. Let's say 20, 30 customers. We heard this kind of similar thing. Let's now see if this applies across our entire customer base. That's when you use a survey. And then you send it out and go, wow, 32% of either this customer segment, because you might find that it's just certain customers in that in a segment that agree or disagree with that. And that's what you're using. So you're getting the across the customer base and then also very deep by using interviews and surveys together. And that's the best way you can use the two of them.
That's awesome.
And then to Richard, I was going to just add that if you add revenue on top of that as a layer, let's say using Anita's example, 32% are saying this in our database, and we look at their revenue contribution to the bottom line, that tells a huge story too. Are they the customers that only spend $100 when our average customer spends $1,500?
Yes.
So is that really a customer profile for us? That may be a discussion we may need to have strategically at C-suite level. Or is this 30% of the Pareto principle, the 20% who's paying 80% of the bills? Because if it's 30% of those folks, that's a problem. If they're the people spending, the average customer spending, $5,000, and the average loyal customer spending $5,000 when the average customer only spends $2,000, and 30% of the loyal customers are complaining, that's a different level of urgency. I'm on the right path, am I, Anita?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Keep going.
Yeah.
This is important for people to understand. Yeah.
Wow. I know we're running out of time, Richard. And
I know, but we're gonna recap this.
Richard is kind of like my old principal in elementary school. When I get out of line, he'll come, check me with the thing, say, hey, get back in line. And because we always run out of time because there's so much I want to ask. Richard, did you have a question you wanted to ask? I did cut you off. I'm sorry.
Well, you did cut me off. And for those, I am a non-violent CEO. There is no type of abuse. I'm just making sure that's understood. But I did want to recap what you said, Anita and Roger, because I think, it passes through. You have to know how to use your tools. So interviews, maybe focus groups, that's deep dive. You're investigating. You're trying to find out what are the factors, the areas that hurt, the pain points for the customer. Then you use your survey to verify what you're seeing, and then to get a voice to understand how wide this issue might be. And then, Roger, you're connecting that to your revenue streams to find out, okay, from this particular group, okay, we've realized they're a significant portion of our revenue base. How much will it be affecting us if we don't address it? Or maybe how much are we losing and we're not realizing it? And I think even though we can scale it up for the mom and pops, for the smaller businesses, if you're selling potted plants, your boutique nursery, if you find that your customers have a problem with your soil, that's a couple of them. But if you find out overall, all of your customers have an issue with your soil, you need to realize you need to address your vendor. Maybe you need to change your supplier. Maybe you need to put out a blast and say, we're sorry that your plants are dying within 2 weeks of you carrying them home. We fixed this situation. But going back to what you said is, in that interview, in that focus group, you don't try to fix that problem and say, okay, we're going to switch. You want to make sure you understand the problem, you diagnose the problem, you have a valid solution, and then you roll that out. So I just want to make sure, is the process tree correct? so that people who are just taking bits and bytes. Okay, great. Go ahead.
Yes,
Rob.
yes.
And
yes.
that is the entire process. That's your strategy. That's part of your strategy right there, is using those tools to gather that information to make better decisions. And those better decisions will then positively impact your bottom line.
AKA, we make more money. So my
You got it.
we
Yes.
make more money.
Yes.
I think,
yes.
you know, in the Caribbean, we have, I won't say the name of the company, but we have companies that are okay with making X amount per year because of the small economy, whether, you know, it's just how the nature of business. But one of the things that I've seen in my region is I'm a lover of sandwiches. I love them. Local sandwich shops will be okay with a certain type of customer, but then you'll have Subway that will walk in. You'll have these major franchises that will come into the Caribbean market. And then all of a sudden, they're taking a large portion of your customers. They're offering services and products that you don't offer. And it's like you kind of accept the fact that it is the way it is. It's big business. I'm just a small mom and pop. What you're saying today is there are tools that, regardless if you're a 500 million revenue company or 5,000 per month, you can figure it out and increase your ability to retain your customers.
Absolutely, you can.
My small businesses there.
And that's the whole point, is that it's not an inevitability. Just because Subway could open up next door, it doesn't necessarily mean your business. We had it. So I have a small shopping plaza across the road from where I live. And we had a massive retailer come in. And then we have a local store that they have the same products. Okay. And people were really scared of this little store going out of business because the behemoth is literally like 50 meters away. Like they are like right in each other's necks almost. And you know what? That small business, because it differentiated itself and has loyal customers, it has now been 6 years that these two have coexisted. 6 years. But all we heard was the doom and gloom of this big company coming in and that little store is not going to make it. 6 years, they're still there. And I still go for certain things at the smaller store rather than the bigger store because they really do customer service well. They understand and have niche products that they didn't quite have before that they now bring in that the big retailer doesn't. Like there's opportunity. It's not an inevitability that you have to close your business or slowly watch it being sucked dry by these big corporations. You don't have to. But you got to find out, though, what's going to keep your customers. What is going to keep them? And then make those decisions to help them to stay.
Said it. You just said it in the reasons that you kept going to that smaller business. It was relationship, because you know the service you get, you know exactly what to expect every time. So that relationship and expectation and personalization, they offered things the big box didn't. And that I'm highlighting that, Richard, because that's a big miss. My very first client, when I decided I was done with corporate anything, this is back in 2015, it was a coffee shop. I used to go there. When I decided to quit my job, I used to go there, and they had internet, Wi-Fi, had decent smoothies and nice vegetarian sandwiches. I was trying to be a vegetarian back then. And everybody knew. They come in, people, hey, how you doing, Roger? Hey, how you doing, so and so, so and so. And then there was rumor of Starbucks coming to Trinidad and Tobago. So wait, now we know the Starbucks model that may exist in Canada and the US, but that's not the model they came to Trinidad with. They came with a big box restaurant model.
Oh,
yes. So it's a restaurant, a large size restaurant, probably 1,500 square foot restaurant style, tables for people to sit and dine, and a huge deep menu of sandwiches and that type of thing. But my client was like, well, I don't know if you'll be in business any longer because I heard that Starbucks is coming. So here was my issue. Where this coffee shop was located, there were no other coffee shops anywhere. It's not a place where the demographic fits the Starbucks business model.
Right.
They already excelled at personalization and customization. So they already had a captive audience who knew, you knew exactly how to make my sandwich. You know exactly how I like my coffee, which smoothie I'm coming for at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so on and so forth. But they lost the opportunity. They closed before Starbucks even arrived. And Starbucks didn't even make it close to that part of town. They're in the city center part of town. And they never made it to that small part of town where there's nothing cool or exclusive looking that exists except that coffee shop that left. It was really sad to see. But that's a great example of what you're talking about. It doesn't mean absolute death because you're smaller, because you have something unique and special that they can't develop. You're more agile, you're more customized, you're more personalized. So
And
awesome.
you're a small team. The lady that's the cashier at that, and it's actually a hardware store. So they've chosen again to go a little more niche. She has watched my kids grow up. So that relationship really matters.
It does.
It does. And sometimes I will go there, even though it might be whatever, 20 cents more expensive, $1 more expensive, because then we chat, right? I don't know who the heck is going to be. It's usually young people at the cash. Half the time they don't even say hello to you. Actually, they usually do, but that's about all the conversation you get. It's very different. And it's Roger, that's like, that story just breaks my heart because it is not an inevitability, but it does mean you have to in some ways get closer to your customers.
Yes.
Just like in the marriage. Right? You can show up once a year with some flowers and some chocolates on an anniversary and here you go. And then go, put your feet up on the TV put your feet up on the couch, watch some TV and there's not much engagement. Or you can start asking, how's your day? How are things for you? What could I do to make your day a little better?
I may need to call you offline, Anita, just for some tips so I can stay happily married. So just stay tuned for that call. All right.
Hey, I just gave it to you, Roger. Not once a year. Ask every day. And not just how are you? Because we do how's it going? How are you? That's a surface level. What can I do to make your day a little better? Ask that question. Boy, will you start off a relationship in a really strong way when you're coming at it from a service perspective versus what can I get out of it perspective.
Ooh. That's a nugget there, Richard.
She's
business.
Making me relive past sales trauma memories and retail disasters. I had a boss that literally was that mentality. How can I sell it? When can I sell it? Who can buy it? And I have a really short, horrible story. We had a very large-sized gentleman, maybe 6'2", 6'3", 260 pounds, a very solid gentleman. And I was in my younger days of clothing retail. My boss sold him a velour jumpsuit, like, velour hoodie, sweatpants, and he was going out that evening, dancing and whatnot. The gentleman came back, returned the outfit and said he nearly died. He sweat, he almost passed out. And so even though my boss at the time made that $200, $300 sale because it was a signature brand, the velour, he almost lost that customer indefinitely. But I was able to say, hey, you should have stayed with me because I know your size. I know you like your breathable cottons, you like short pants, these things. So it's definitely the relationship I've seen in retail where individuals will walk out because their personal attendant isn't there. That particular sales rep isn't there. Now to connect that on the larger scale, consumers will treat your entire establishment like that. I don't like how you treat me. You don't value my dollar. I will go to another location where they know my name, where they remember my preference, where they've seen, me and my family or me and my loved ones, shop it and they understand our habits. And I think this is a big message for those, because we talked about this in a previous podcast. Caribbean folks kind of get locked into a bad relationship with businesses. You have the monopolies, and they say, I just have to accept this. You don't. But on the business end, business owners, Anita, you're breaking my heart looking at your heart being broken. I believe she should be on one of those telethons. Save a small business now. With your donation of 5 sales, we'll be able to save every small business.
Just 30 cents a day.
Just 30 cents a day. But for businesses, I'm really trying to nail this point home. You have the ability to change. Yes. I think that's what the crux of this conversation is. You have the ability to change. You do not have to stay fast in that moment. Yes. Go ahead, Roger.
No, and I was just saying, and it's worth it to you to do so. It's worth it to you.
It's 15 minutes of your time. Yeah, instead of the 30, it's not 30 cents a day, it's 15 minutes a week. Why don't we do that? If you can dedicate 15 minutes a week to talking with one of your happiest customers and one of your unhappiest customers, you will literally change the trajectory of your business.
I think is that a good way to end, Richard? I think that's a good way to end.
Great way to end. And I don't think we could expound upon that, but I know we need to catch up and see what else is going on in ATI world.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to leave that alone.
No, I don't. I wasn't going to. So I like asking these questions. That's why he's setting it up all professional and stuff. You have a lot going on, Anita. What's bubbling with ATI right now? And rumor has it there's a book on the horizon?
Yeah, there's the book. But even before that, we ended up creating a course. And it is actually called the Customer Retention Blueprint. It is for the C-suite. So if you want to give a little nudge to your C-suite there, the course is self-directed, so it's your own pace, but you actually build a customer retention strategy. That is what the blueprint is, step by step. This is how you can build a customer retention strategy. And the goal is to start getting retention wins within that 90-day period that, once you launch it, because it's one thing to build a strategy, but if you're not executing on it, then it doesn't change anything. Absolutely. So it's called the Customer Retention Blueprint. It's coming out shortly. So June 1st, I'm not quite sure when the podcast will launch, but I will send you the information. You could put it in the show notes. And that's a really great place to start, but really it's for the C-suite. So, that's who our ideal clients are. But if you're not, I do have something else for you. We have one resource, which I know will go into the show notes. It's just 5 strategies to reduce churn.
Yes.
And then on top of that, we also have a blog, and there's a 9-part series. You can just read it on your own time, which will also help you understand why customer retention is so important and guide you to building your first customer retention strategy. So only the course is paid. Everything else is free. And no, you don't have to even give your email for this. Okay. Like you can just go to the site. We do not gate our content. You just go and freely take as much of that information. If it's going to help you, that's what matters most to me.
Amen. Amen. You just preached right there. I'm ready to pass the basket for tithes right now. That's I love that message. Thank you. Thank you for sharing you and your resources with IAM's audience. We love that. So tell us about the book.
The book. Oh, I don't even know yet.
If you can.
I don't even know where it's going to go yet, Roger. This course was unplanned. The other thing we are launching, which will be once we sort of, the course is done, we're going to be promoting it shortly. We're launching our very first newsletter. So we just pivoted the business about 6-7 months ago. So the newsletter is going to be our next thing. And that's just called the Customer Keeper. And it's for B2B businesses. This is, you don't have to be in SaaS if you're selling to other businesses. It's all around customer retention as well.
Right.
And that's where we're going next, and then the book. So we got
Okay.
a couple other things first before we hit the book. But
Okay.
again, I want people, like, if you can't tell how passionate I am about this, like my hands are sweating. Like that's how I just want people to, like, you can do this. You can do this. I am your cheerleader. I am here behind you saying it doesn't have to be this difficult.
Yes.
Just talk with your customers, get close with them, go to our site. It's ati.ac. And the AC, I say, stands for all your customers, because that's who you're hoping to retain. So
Okay.
ati.ac,
AC.
dig through our stuff. Like I said, it's free, it's there, but make the commitment that, you want to do better for your customers. You want to do better for yourself.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Awesome.
so much, Anita, for your time. Roger, I'll let you close. And
Man, I am overwhelmed here. I know you've got things to do, so we'll have to chat at some other point in time. But ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank so much Anita Toth for sharing her wisdom, her experience, and her resources with us. I am sure you now understand the importance of managing customer retention and reducing customer churn and how urgent it is. She's given us some tactics and resources for more tactics to do that. Our next guest at our next podcast, we want to keep educating you and keeping you informed. She has built customer experience departments across many countries for many companies and spends a lot of time with C-suites and leaders of businesses. So she'll be sharing with us what the customer experience strategy looks like at the C-suite level through the C-suite lens. So thank you for joining us at the IAM CX podcast. I am Roger Nicholas, and our CEO, Richard Dorsey, as well as our wonderful, energetic, and happy cheerleading guest, the Churn Crusher, Anita Toth. Thank you so much. God bless and have a great day.
Thank you.